Hi everyone, I hope you're doing great, and this is Rohit from careersprints.com. And in this video today I want to talk about the 7th edition of the PMBOK and how the 7th edition is different from the 6th edition of the PMBOK. So what exactly has changed between these two versions. In addition to that, I also want to talk about how the change to the current edition of the PMBOK is going to impact your exam preparation, especially if you're preparing to take the exam in 2021. And in addition to that, I also want to take you through some sections from the PMBOK 7th edition, just to give you an understanding of what the layout is going to look like. So right off the bat, my initial thoughts about the PMBOK is that the PMBOK is that the 7th edition of the PMBOK seems more high level as compared to the 6th edition of the PMBOK. So the 6th edition of the PMBOK was a more process-based approach. So there were a total of 10 knowledge areas and 49 processes in the 6th edition of the PMBOK. And what they've done with the 7th edition is that they have moved from a process-based approach to a more principle-based approach. But before we get there, I just want to give you a download on what exactly PMI has done and why have they decided to undertake this change. So every 4 years, PMI normally changes the version of the PMBOK, and the moment they start, they release one version of the PMBOK, they start working on the next version of the PMBOK as well. So when they started with when they would have probably released the 6th edition of the PMBOK, they would have already started working on the 7th edition. So over the last 3 to 4 years, PMI has gathered a lot of information from different stakeholders, from different focus groups, from project managers, from PMO leaders, and generally people in the industry or people who work with PMI. Like, PMI is a big body, so they have a lot of people volunteering and working with PMI. So based on the feedback, they have come up with the decision that they want to keep the PMBOK a little more high level this time, and at the same time they want to ensure that they are able to have a more principle-based approach rather than a more prescriptive approach that was there in the 6th edition of the PMBOK. So the main reasons are, like it says, they want to maintain and enhance the credibility and relevance of the PMBOK guide. They want to improve the readability and the usefulness of the PMBOK, and they want to basically ensure that all the different stakeholders all over the world who are involved in doing projects, they want to ensure that the PMBOK meets their needs. So it says sense stakeholder information and content needs and provide vetted supplemental content supporting practical application. So based on this feedback, this is the change that they have made. I'm going to get into the changes in a little more depth, but broadly just understand that the PMBOK is now more high level as compared to what it was in the previous edition, which was more prescriptive. So like I said earlier, in the PMBOK 7th edition, PMI has changed the way they have written the book from a process-based approach to a principle-based approach. So basically it has become more high level, and let's see what PMI says in their own words. So PMI says, while effective in supporting good practice, process-based standards are prescriptive by their very nature. So they are themselves saying that the PMBOK 6th edition was more prescriptive, and if they go on to say, therefore, this edition shifts to a principle-based standard to support effective project management and to focus more on intended outcomes rather than deliverables. So what PMI is now doing is that PMI is saying that, because we are going to have a more principle-based approach rather than a process-based approach, it is going to focus less on product deliverables or project deliverables, and it is going to focus more on project outcomes, which could be the benefit that you realize by carrying out a project, or the business benefits, for instance. So this principle-based approach takes the PMBOK and makes it a little more universally applicable, and it gives you it basically helps you get into the mindset of project management, rather than telling you the exact steps that you need to take to reach from the beginning of your project till the end of your project. Now, some people in the project management community are very torn about this. So some people like the principle based approach. I think broadly most people like the principle based approach, but at the same time there are some people in the community who have used the sixth edition as a reference book for a lot of their projects, and there's a lot of good information that's also there in the sixth edition, and they feel that PMI has diminished the quality, or the overall standard of the PMBOK with the PMBOK 7th edition. So when you read the book, you can make your own judgment. I think there are some good things in this book, and at the same time I also believe that what PMI has done is that when you sign up for the PMI membership, you also get access to something known as PMI Standards Plus, which is a digital product that they have created, where they go on to elaborate a lot about the tools, the techniques, the models, the artifacts, and a lot of good stuff that's actually covered in the in the 7th edition of the PMBOK. But what I think what PMI is trying to do is that they have condensed the information that's there in the book, and at the same time, if you want additional information, you can become a PMI member, and you can gain access to the PMI Standards Plus, and you can gain access to all the templates, the artifacts, and all the other good tools that they talk about as part of the PMI Standards Plus. So I think it's one of their strategies to push their digital product, and that way they can also get more people to become members of PMI, which is also a revenue stream for them. But this is purely my personal opinion. I could be wrong, but that's what it seems to me. And when you become a PMI member, when you get your copy of the PMBOK, you can form your own judgment as to what you think is going on. So anyways, moving on, I also want to talk about a little more about the PMBOK. So many people may be under the impression that now that the new version of the PMBOK is out, it does it remain consistent with the other books that are there, that have been written by PMI. For example, there are books on program management, there are books on portfolio management, there are books on risk management. So PMI goes on to say that this principle based approach that has been captured in the 7th edition is also consistent with the evolution of the standards for program management, the 3rd and the 4th edition, the standard for portfolio management, the 4th edition, and the standard for risk management in portfolios, programs, and projects, and even the benefits realization management practice guide that they have. So it is consistent with other standards, and it's important to note that the 7th edition does not necessarily replace the 6th edition of the PMBOK as well, right? So if you're preparing for your PMP exam, you are still going to use the 6th edition of the PMBOK. You're still going to use the Agile Practice Guide. Those are still going to be your main books. And in addition to that, if you want, you can read the 7th edition of the PMBOK. I would actually recommend you to at least read it once, so that you get into the mindset of and you get an understanding of what exactly PMI has changed with the 7th edition of the PMBOK, and maybe also learn about some new tools which you may not immediately see in the exam, but PMI can incorporate some of this information or some of these concepts in the exam at a later stage. So for now, just use the 6th edition and the Agile Practice Guide, and at least go through the PMBOK 7th edition. At least go through it once. Now, in addition to the principle based approach and the change from the process based approach, I also want to talk about the standards for project management, which is actually one of the first sections of the PMBOK 7th edition. So the standards for project management has been there in all PMBOKs that PMI has released in the past. So it was there in the 6th edition, it was there even in the previous editions. So but what they've done is that they've kind of switched out the sequence in which it's there in the book. So the 7th edition starts with the standard for project management, whereas in the 6th edition it was after the PMBOK guide. After the content of the PMBOK guide, you would find the standards for project management. So, but what they've done is that, PMI now says that they recognize that a project is a part of a system, and, PMI generally wants all project managers to understand that, whatever projects or programs you're running, or whatever teams you're a part of, eventually you're contributing to a greater whole. you're a part of a system, and you should look at things from a system perspective. So at the end of the day, if the entire system does not function well, value will not be delivered to an end user or to a client. So PMI has incorporated a more system focus for value delivery in this book. So in PMI's own words, it says a systems focus for value delivery changes the perspective from one of governing portfolios, programs, and projects to focusing on the value chain that links those and other business capabilities to advancing organizational strategy, value, and business objectives. So, so PMI has recognized that most businesses are trying to deliver value, and especially with agile frameworks coming to the fore, Scrum becoming extremely popular, and everyone constantly talking about delivering customer value and business value, and because that's kind of the buzzword. And I mean, it's not the buzzword, but it's also logically makes sense. Like, if you're not delivering value to your customers, then your customer is going to go to someone else. So an organization is made up of many value streams. So PMI has recognized concepts such as lean, concepts such as DevOps, because they talk a lot about delivering value to customers, and so on and so forth. So PMI recognizes this, and they have incorporated that in the PMBOK 7th edition. So if you look at the second chapter in the standards for project management, it is called a system for value delivery. Now, obviously, we are not going to talk about that chapter in depth, but just understand that PMI basically wants you to think about the entire system rather than just thinking about the project that you're doing. The PMI wants you to think how you're contributing to the overall value stream or to the overall business value of the organization. So moving on, I basically want to talk about performance domains. So if you remember, in the 6th edition of the PMBOK, we had the 10 knowledge areas. And what PMI has now done is that they have moved from knowledge areas to something called as performance domains. So let's look at what PMI defines a performance domain as. So PMI says that a performance domain is a group of related activities that are critical for the effective delivery of project outcomes. Collectively, the performance domains represent a project management system of interactive, interrelated, and interdependent management capabilities that work in unison to achieve desired project outcomes. So let's look at what those performance domains are. So if you look at the box on the right, it shows you the performance domain. So it says project performance domains, right? So it says there is stakeholder, there's team, there's development approach and life cycle, there's planning, there's project work, there's delivery, there's measurement, and there is uncertainty. So as aptly defined by PMI in the PMBOK, it says that these 8 performance domains are basically activities that are critical for the delivery of a project outcome. So if you want the team to perform well, right, you have to deliver, or you have to carry out all the different activities, or these are basically just recommendations that are made by PMI, from an activity perspective, that these are all the activities that you should be carrying out to get the maximum output from the team, or to get the maximum value from the team, right? Similarly, if you're looking at, for instance, planning, right, what are the different activities that you need to carry out so that you get the maximum bang for your buck for the time that you've spent doing planning. So these are the 8 performance domains, and they form a major core of the PMBOK 7th edition, right? And they although when you read the performance domains, it would seem like it's a condensed version of the knowledge areas, which to some extent it is, right? They have actually reduced the amount of content that's there in this book. They have definitely made it more concise. But having said that, they do give you a good overview of the different elements that would go into each of the performance domains, for instance. Next, they have a section on tailoring as well. So if you remember, or if you've read the 6th edition, generally, in the 6th edition, tailoring was a section which was primarily shown right at the beginning of the knowledge area. So, when you would get into a knowledge area like scope or cost or quality, they would have a section where it would say tailoring, and they would have like 2-3 paragraphs for tailoring. What they've done is that they've crafted an entire new chapter here, they've carved out an entire new chapter here for tailoring. And it just goes on to explain a little more about tailoring in more depth, and just basically expands upon the work that was all the tailoring sections that were there in the PMBOK 6th edition. Now, the next thing that they have is a section called Models, Methods, and Artifacts in the book. So if you see, it says a new section on models, methods, and artifacts provides a high-level grouping of models, methods, and artifacts that support project management. So basically, models, methods, and artifacts are like your tools and techniques that were there in the 6th edition. So these are like specific tools that you would use. For example, like the Tuckman's ladder, or maybe like a specific tool that you would use for the purpose of management of scope, or maybe like a prioritization technique, like a Moscow prioritization technique. So they talk about specific tools and techniques, but now they call them models, methods, and artifacts. So like it suggests, there are models, there are methods, and there are artifacts. So there could be a leadership model, there could be a specific artifact, maybe like a document or a template, and there could be methods that you could use to enhance the overall performance of your project. So, but if you have to relate it to what was there in the 6th edition, I would say you can relate it to the tools, techniques section of the 6th edition. And then what PMI has done is, as I pointed out earlier, they have created something known as a PMI Standards Plus, which is an interactive digital platform, which basically just expands on everything that's given in the PMBOK 7th edition. So you want to get a specific template, you want to learn a little more about a particular artifact, maybe you want to get a deeper understanding of a particular model, you can go to the digital PMI Standards Plus, the digital platform, and you can maybe find an article or a video or something which would basically just expand on that knowledge and help you get a better understanding of it as well. So broadly, these are the changes in the PMBOK. So if I have to just go to this diagram here, or this picture here, if you see, it clearly shows you the switch over from the 6th edition to the 7th edition. So in the 6th edition, the book started with a guide to the project management body of knowledge, and those were the different chapters that it had. So they had the introduction chapter, they had the project environment, the role of the PM, and they had the different knowledge areas. And then the standards for project management was after the guide. But what they've done with the 7th edition is that now the standards for project management, is before the guide. So, you have around 2-3 chapters in the standards for project management, and then you have the PMBOK guide. And then obviously the glossary, the index, and the appendix, they are the same. The information could be different, but they both point towards the PMI Standards Plus, which is their digital platform, right? And like I said earlier, they probably want people to stay members of PMI and be able to access the content from the digital platform, because everything has turned digital these days, and this is the way to consume information. People are consuming information through YouTube videos and through things that are online. They don't really need to physically even get a book. You get a PDF copy of the PMBOK guide, and you can read through it and pass your exam. So, I'm just going to take you through the table of contents. It's just a reiteration of what I've discussed. So, the book starts with the standards for project management, which has the introduction chapter, the system for value delivery. So the first section basically covers the standards for project management. And then you have the project management principles. So I'm going to make videos on each of these principles as well, because I think it's critical for anyone who's preparing for the PMP to actually have a good understanding about these principles, because I do believe that at some stage of the PMP exam, they are going to introduce these principles. They're going to test you on it, right? In fact, a lot of other frameworks like ITIL or even Prince2 or any other framework, that you can think of, they're becoming more principle driven. Like a lot of frameworks are becoming more principle driven. So I think it's the natural it's the natural transition that has happened even with PMI, seeing how other frameworks have evolved. And then you have the project management body of knowledge, basically the core of the book, where they talk about the performance domains. So you can see that 2.1 to section 2.8 they have all the different performance domains. Then you have a chapter on tailoring, where they go into a little more depth about tailoring the performance domain. So they have some content around how to tailor for each of the performance domains, how to tailor the use of project management. And then they have the models, methods, and artifacts. So they talk about leadership models, communication models, models applied across different. So they also talk about the application of the different models across performance domains. And then other tools and techniques that were kind of discussed in the 6th edition of the PMBOK as well. So all of that great information is also there in the 7th edition of the guide. And then obviously you have the appendix. I'm not going to talk about the appendix. Maybe that will be done in another video, but as long as if you're able to get your hands on the PMBOK, you can get the PMBOK just by becoming a PMI member. You get a free download. And in addition to the PMBOK, you actually get all the other standards and guides, and you get access to the PMI Standards Plus as well. So for a cost of, I think, $139 US dollars, you will be able to get access to all this great information. So it probably would be worth your money to check it out, right? So that's about it. If you have any questions, please leave a comment in the video, and or you can shoot me an email as well. I'm going to write my email as part of the description of this video. And I wish you all the best for your PMP exam. And if you like this video, you want to see more videos from us, you know what you have to do. You know the drill. Go and hit like, subscribe to the video, and whenever we have a new video, you will be notified of it at that time. So all the best for your PMP exam, and I hope if you have a copy of the PMBOK guide, I hope you're enjoying reading it. Take care.